Hey guys, this is video number 3, my 3-part series for first-time home buyers. This is the most exciting video. This means that we have gotten your pre-approval, that we've been looking at property, and we're ready to write an offer. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the terms of the contract so that when I say, okay, we're writing an offer, that you know what we're about to talk about and that we can all be on the same page about what those terms need to be. So the day that I'm recording this video, it is February of 2021, and it is a seller's market. So if that changes in the future, I will re-record this video. But for these intents and purposes, I am going to pretty much assume that the home that you're writing an offer on probably has multiple offers. And if it doesn't have multiple offers, it has been on the market a very short amount of time. Now, if that doesn't fit what we're writing an offer on, if it's been on the market a while, there's not multiple offers, and you kind of have a little more breathing room as far as negotiating goes with the seller, then some of these things I'm about to say might not apply. But for the most part, most of the buyers I work with this year are going to need to heed some of these directions. So, first of all, the first thing we need to know is what's the deadline or expiration for the offer. And that's my job to find that out from the other agent. We need to know if they have any other offers on the table. If they do, how many, and when are those offers going to be cut off, or when are they due? If you're the first offer, or there's not another one yet, then we kind of have the luxury of being able to set the timeline. A lot of times we're going to give the seller 24 hours to respond. But sometimes there's already some sort of like timeline in play because of the multiple offer situation. So that's step number one, is if it's Tuesday and they're accepting offers until Friday, then we know even if we're the first one, there's probably going to be multiple offers. So that's step number one, is figuring out how long we have to write it and how long we have to wait. Step number 2, you should bring your checkbook with you to showings, because we're probably going to decide there if it's something that you're going to write an offer on. And when we do decide that, we need to decide an earnest money amount. Earnest money, if you remember, I talked about it 2 videos ago. That is a good faith deposit telling the seller that you are planning on purchasing their home and you're not going to walk away for some random reason not provided by the contract. And if you do walk away, they get to keep your money. But if you buy that house, then that money gets credited to you at closing. A standard earnest deposit is about $1,000. Sometimes we can go lower. But in this market, I would actually recommend going higher. It shows the seller that you are more serious about buying their house and you are not planning on walking away from the transaction, at least not for cold feet or for some, lack of something on your part. Again, this is money that's your money. You get it back. If you're going to do a $50,000 down payment, $1,000 is a pretty low earnest amount. You could probably go up to $2,500 or $3,000, and that's money that you get back at closing. But if you walk away, that they get to keep it. And when you're in multiple offer situation, that just makes you look like a more solid buyer than someone else who's only going to offer them $500 or $1,000. The next thing we need to talk about is the purchase price. Obviously, a house is worth what you're willing to pay for it. This is where it's really important to understand the conversation with your lender about what your monthly payment is going to be, how much the taxes are, what your principal and interest is, so that when it comes time to write an offer on a house, sometimes it can be really scary to go $5,000 or $10,000 over list price. But if you know what that translates to as far as how that changes your down payment and how that changes your monthly payment, it's usually actually not that much more out of pocket for your down payment or on a monthly basis. And so it's really important to understand what your budget is with your lender and with me, so that we all know and we're all on the same page of like, hey, this is what we can afford per month and this is what we can afford for the down payment. And so we need to look at this price range and kind of expect that we're going to have to go over your list price a little bit, especially if you're looking anywhere under $350. In the Kansas City market in 2021, you're probably going to have to go over list price. Another thing that we want to talk about is closing costs. A lot of buyers ask for the sellers to pay some or all of their closing costs. And if that's you, if you're a buyer who needs to ask your seller for closing costs, Don't fret, my pet, because we can get it done. It can happen, especially if we can change a lot of other things with the offer just to make it more attractive to them. But if you are able to pay your own closing costs and you are in a multiple offer situation, it is better to pay your own closing costs so that the seller is going to like your offer more than someone else who can't pay their own closing costs. Again, it's not like we can't overcome that. We can, but if you're able to pay it, it's good to pay it yourself, especially depending on, what your offer is and what the situation is. Another thing to discuss is the home warranty. A home warranty is kind of like an insurance policy that protects anything mechanical in your home, like plumbing, electrical, appliances. They usually cost around $500 or $600. You can buy one yourself if you want to, or you can ask the seller to pay for that. That's a very typical thing that buyers ask sellers to pay for, but again, in a multiple offer situation, sometimes it's best just to leave that off. It really depends on your personal preference. If you want a home warranty, you really like that idea, you're more than welcome to pay for it yourself or ask the seller to pay for it, depending on how it looks at the time. Closing in possession is another thing that we'll decide when we're writing the offer, like what day we're going to close on and what day you get to take possession, like down to what time and what has to happen for you to take possession. So those are things that we'll want to think through. If you're going to be on vacation, we don't want to close during that time. So we'll just need to look at your calendar and look at what's going on with the house and try to make sure that we get the right closing in possession from the beginning. And again, in multiple offer situations, doing whatever the seller wants for closing in possession usually makes you look better. We'll have the inspection period built into the contract from the beginning. Like I said in the last video, that's usually 10 days. But as a negotiation strategy, we could either shorten or lengthen that time period. And another thing people like to do in offers with the inspection is sometimes people will sign an in its present condition addendum, also known as the as is. That means that you're going to take the property. That doesn't mean you can't get an inspection. You can still get an inspection, but that means you're not going to be asking the seller to repair anything. That also doesn't mean that you can't walk away from the contract. There are actually different levels of as is, and depending on which one you select, you can still get inspections, you can still walk away, and you may even still ask for repairs, but you're basically saying, hey, we understand that you're not going to fix anything. So that is always something that you can add to your offer if necessary. I don't love doing as is for first-time home buyers, just because you want to make sure that your investment is really a good one, but sometimes it's necessary. Especially in the market that we're in. So just be prepared that if we need to talk about things that are going to make your offer look better, as is one of those things that we can do to make it look better. Appraised value contingency. This is the last thing I'm going to cover as far as like when we are going to write an offer on something, we need to be on the same page about what this appraised value contingency means. So when you get your appraisal on the house, the appraiser is going to tell your lender, yes, the house is worth what they're paying for it, or no, the house is not worth what they're paying for it. Let's say you're paying $250 and the house was listed at $240 and the appraisal comes back at $245. What that means is that the appraiser is telling your lender, nope, this house isn't worth $250, they're $5,000 over market value. So that $5,000 that you've already agreed to pay the seller has to come from somewhere. Now, a lot of buyers expect the seller to just lower the sales price to whatever the appraisal comes back at. You can't really count on that in this market. I mean, it would be nice if sellers always did that, but they don't always do that, because if they have 5 more people who offered on the same price on their property, then it might be worth it to them to cancel with you if you can't come up with the extra money. So in writing this offer from the beginning, something that you can do is tell them, hey, if the appraisal comes back low, we agree to pay X amount of dollars over the appraised value, just to put that money back in your pocket and make sure that they're going to get closer to the actual price that you are offering them. I think that's a really, really great kind of insider tip when it comes to appraisals and trying to make your offer look better, especially if you've got the cash to do that. It's not something that not a lot of people do, but honestly, it's common. In my situations last year where I had some appraisals come back low on listings, I think more than 75% of the time, the buyers brought extra money as well as the sellers coming down. So I think if you can plan ahead of time that if the appraisal comes back low, you're going to meet in the middle with the seller, that is a really huge tool that you can use to make your offer look better. So if we're ready to write an offer on a house and you've got your pre-approval and we've been looking and you found the one and you're super excited and you can imagine, you know, your Christmas tree is going to go here and you're going to take your kids' pictures before prom over there. Like if this is the one for you, then these are all the terms that we need to make sure are on point and exactly what they need to be to get you this house. So I can't wait to write the offer for you, and I hope that this first-time homebuyer course has been great.